I'm Meriel Chamberlin. I'm founder and creator of Full Circle Fibres, Australia's only paddock-to-product cotton supply chain. We've got beautiful, ethical and traceable yarns, fabrics and garments. And we know exactly where they start. So we're talking today about what's possible and how does that fit in with the SDGs. So when I was asked to do this, I got thinking about these SDGs. They're used now all over the world in a range of countries, businesses, organisations and cultures, and we're all trying to make the world a bit better. But why do we need to? How did we end up with this inequality in the first place? So I did a bit of homework, and I came across this quote. Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It's man-made. And overcoming and eradicating this is going to take the actions of human beings. Overcoming poverty is not an act of charity. It's an act of justice. This was said by Nelson Mandela in 2005 at a rally in London in Trafalgar Square outside the G7. That was when we were working on the MDGs, and now we're on the SDGs, so we seem to be struggling a bit. And I wonder if this is because we're working in the economic framework that's caused a lot of these problems. I'm in the textile and clothing industry. We're in the thick of it. There are millions in poverty, modern slavery, the environmental carnage is overwhelming. And it's often the first industry in when countries start to develop. It's over 30 years since we've seen footage of exploitation in supply chains of our favourite brands and sportswear. It's over 20 years since Naomi Klein wrote No Logo. And since then, we've had a plethora of certifications and protocols and pledges, trading initiatives. The fashion revolution started 6 years ago after Rana Plaza, but it still feels like we're just nudging at the edge. We're beginning to make a difference. But as much as we make a difference here, we seem to add capacity at the bottom, down there. And when we think about it, 20 years ago, the world used about 50 million tonnes of textile fibre a year. Now we use over 95 million tonnes. And most of that growth has come from using synthetics, incidentally. So that looks good, doesn't it? We've been lifting people out of poverty. There's increased GDP. Surely that's better. But we've created a plague. In Australia alone, there's 6,000 kilos of waste apparel and textiles to landfill every 10 minutes. And in doing that, we've gone on this churn of growth, this goal of growth. And what's worse is we haven't even done it well. We've embedded mediocrity and accepted it. But surely those people's lives are a bit better, aren't they? Better than they were? Gosh, we're generous, aren't we? So, it's in this viewpoint, with 20 years' experience in the industry, that I took a look at starting Full Circle Fibres. There's a lot of brilliant initiatives out there to try and start reducing that mound, where we're going to be recycling and reusing and upcycling and selling secondhand, and world's biggest garage sale is a leading light in this field, and it's awesome to be here with you, Yaz. But I'm thinking about what's next. What happens when we do actually sort out fast fashion? What happens when we're not wearing plastic anymore and there's no warehouses full of dead stock? What is that going to look like when we're making our textiles and clothing in equilibrium? The circular economy. Well, there's a lot of people been drawing maps. The graphic artists are happy, and we've got a lot of cheerleaders that put these in presentations. But what does that mean in practice? What can we do now to start? And who is actually implementing these pretty pictures? So that's what we're looking at. And if you think about it, what are we still going to need in 2040? Socks, jocks, and undies? I bet everybody here is wearing at least something cotton. We're going to need our clothes for our sport and recreation, living in different climates. We're going to need our sheets and towels and upholstery. We're also going to need the serious stuff. We are still going to need our firefighters to be safe. We're going to need a bowler suits. We're probably still going to need to clothe our soldiers. Hopefully we're going to be needing to clothe our Antarctic scientists. And we're also going to need a swathe of filters and covers and tarps and conveyor belts. This industry is enormous, and it touches almost every human life on the planet. So we have to think about what that's going to look like then. What are we going to need to be doing? What does that industry look like? We're going to need still to be able to weave, knit, dye, print, sew. Well, guess what? We've got some good news, actually. Because actually we can do a lot of this now in the way we want to work. We can be careful about where things are from, and we have a lot of the ability to put that into action now. Because if we use sustainable fibres, we still use the technology, some of which could be 100 years old, really, in principle, but we use it by being creative and novel with that technology and designing things really well. So that's really exciting. That gets me really excited. The idea that in the future, our designers, our technicians, our engineers, our chemists will all be working together so that those diagrams come to life. And when we do that, when we create industry where everybody's valued, everybody's got a role that's something that they're paid well, that means they're part of a community. When manufacturing works well, it can be the beating heart of a community where everybody's talents are used. People feel pride in what they do. And people take home enough pay that their kids do go to school and the taxes do pay for education and healthcare. Well, that sounds like we've actually started delivering all those 17 SDGs, doesn't it? But it's just manufacturing the things we need really well and properly. It's often easy to think somebody's going to come up with a solution. There's going to be something tech. It's going to be it, and we'll all just buy it, and that's going to be great. And I realized I needed to step up, because it's actually going to be a jigsaw of different materials and a patchwork of processes and collaborations and cooperatives. And what's going to make sense in one part of the world is going to be different in another part of the world. We'll use the renewable energy that makes sense in place. We'll use what we naturally grow. We'll recycle things in different ways that make sense for our logistics. So I've started with what's in front of me. Cotton. Why cotton? It's brilliant. We take it for granted, but it's actually brilliant. And in Australia, we are the world's most efficient and high-quality cotton-growing country on the planet. Yet, really, we are actually the best at it. It's also pretty awesome because it's naturally machine washable. You can sterilize it over and over. It gets stronger when it's wet. And when it's had this really, really long life, if you can't recycle it, you can bury it in your garden. It's safe. So in the absence of a viable textile recycling industry here, we're using the oldest material circular system, the carbon cycle. So when we use 100% natural fibre, we know that at least can be safely disposed of at end of life. I could have spent tonight giving you all sorts of stats and facts on precision agriculture and amazing engineering in the textile system, the way we can do best practice, what we can do now with forensics for provenance and blockchain to track it. And I'll give you just one. We use 70% less water per kilo than the global average. It's pretty cool. But the bit that misses the point when everybody gets stuck on the data is, what are we actually making? Are we designing things beautifully? Are we designing things that people want to love and cherish and keep and look after? The fibre can be handpicked by angels. The weavers could have been serenaded. But if you mess up the armhole or the crutch is uncomfortable, it's in the bin. And this is where what happens really matters. It's that alchemy, that combination of our designers, our technicians, and our supply chain working together. It could be beautiful, but if they planned it wrong and we air freighted it, what's the carbon cost? So it takes everybody coming together to actually deliver the benefits. The trousers I'm wearing today are over 7 years old. They're 100% cotton. I love them dearly, and I cherish them in the laundry cycle because I can't replace them. They're well designed, they're well made. So it's my thought that when we're trying to achieve these SDGs, we need to be really careful about targets and goals, because we can measure how much we've improved living conditions. We can look at how we've reduced GHGs or waste. But we might be at risk of doing the bare minimum rather than the best possible. Whereas if we do everything through a framework of principled decisions, every decision in our business through that lens, we're going to march towards progress. If everyone was doing that, we'd probably be here talking about striding towards the SDGs. And it got me thinking, do we flip this? Is every time we make a business decision without that lens delaying getting to the SDGs? Every time it's it'll do or in a rush, are we slowing down our progress? Now you might be thinking, well, I'm not a fashion designer. How does this affect me? I go shopping, but I buy secondhand, that's great. But I ask you to think about the decisions you make in your work and in your communities every day or every year. You buy PPE and uniform. You might buy a t-shirt for a hackathon, bottles, bags, and pens for events and conferences. Where did they come from? You're a buyer. Can they be recycled? Can they be composted? Are they actually great products that people will want to use again and again? Or the main question, do we need to buy it? So we offer people the ability to know exactly where it's from. Here's Glenn and his daughter Rebecca are my farmers, and they're at Australian Super Cotton in St George in southwest Queensland, and they are truly awesome people. We know everything about how our fiber's grown, and it is a labour of love. Best practice, quality, and continuous improvement is in their veins. And from there, we know every stage as well, every mill. And in this particular example, we've got a product that we developed with an Indigenous business and an artist from the stolen generation. So not only are we fairly using all the stages of our supply chain, we're sharing the prosperity the best way we can. We can't spin in Australia anymore. We have to do that in the UK by sea freight. When the head tech there said that Glenn's fibre was the best upland cotton he'd seen in his life, my heart just soared. We're not just doing best practice, but we've got the best product too. That's what we're trying to do. So everybody in our supply chain is a high-cost location with high regulation. And yet with that, we're still managing to deliver beautiful products at a reasonable price. By doing this, it means that we are proving that there's no need for anybody else not to fairly pay people in their supply chain. It can feel like it's a drop in the ocean. What are we doing trying to do this when there's this massive, massive industry? But we're leading the way, because if we can do this in our highly expensive supply chains, then there's no excuse for not doing it worldwide. We want to take away not the jobs of people in Bangladesh or Vietnam. I want them to make a living. But I do want to take away the excuses for the inequality. And we're not stopping here. We're now scoping to be able to try to recycle fibres, to be able to include them in our supply chain, to be able to bring that capability here so that we can create more prosperity and grow the circular economy. Until every job at every stage, in every part of our supply chains, is a job that we would be happy for one of our loved ones to do, for wages, for living conditions, for freedoms, for safety nets. Until then, we have work to do. This is what we're aiming to lead the way on. It's not going to be easy. We've got to reframe how we value the materials moving around in our economy, how we're fair and value the labour, and make it so that the jobs aren't just okay, but that people get a sense of satisfaction that can be enjoyable, rewarding to be part of. Every challenge we face is man-made, which means that every solution must be within our reach. We've just got to find the courage. So this is about our legacy. Our legacy as businesses, as we work together and support each other, as we find a way so that we can create impact that we can really smile about. We're beginning to work out that we're mitigating the problems from our industrial and economic revolutions. But we have to make sure that we also take care to preserve and grow our capability for where we labour save and we want to create those industries and those circular economies of the future. We have to keep that technology and grow our skills and techniques. And when we do that, when we look to 2040 and we think about our children and grandchildren, they'll be doing this standing on the shoulders of giants. So all I've done is apply all these things in the industry that I know and I love, to make a supply chain where it's possible to have our essentials made without exploitation, rather than accepting that our essentials are only possible with exploitation. Thank you.